Hi guys, I'm Megan and this is Chiron Equine. Welcome or welcome back. We are at the end of April, which for me is just getting into the start of breeding season and hopefully coming towards the end of foaling season, although the farm I'm working at, we do have quite a few mares left, so we'll see what happens there. But over the next couple of weeks, I want to give you guys a series of videos on breeding horses and the things that to know if you're considering breeding a horse. So today I want to start with the mare. The things you should know before deciding to breed your mare, because that's where most people are starting. So why might you choose to breed a mare? Either you have a really high quality mare, you have a mare that you've got a lot of sentimental attachment to, or you've got a mare that for whatever reason is not doing anything else right now. So if you have a high quality mare, she's registered, she's got a show record, she comes from good stock, that's a great place to start. That really is your gold standard. And that's, in a lot of cases, a fairly easy decision. If you have a mare that you are incredibly sentimentally attached to, that is probably the most complicated way to decide to breed. And the reason I say that is because if you have a mare that you've got a sentimental attachment to, it is likely that she's older, that you've had her for a long time, and that you're having trouble being objective about the decision to breed her. That is really important, because I don't think a lot of people in the horse industry who are not directly involved with breeding understand the risks and the complications that can happen. If you have a mare that you are really attached to and you're thinking about breeding her because you want to have one of her babies, I want you to take a step back and try to be objective about her quality, whether her conformation is good, whether she's got accomplishments that warrant being perpetuated, being passed down, and whether she is going to have a high likelihood of carrying a healthy pregnancy. Older mares are harder to get in foal, especially if they've never had a foal before. They're also maybe more likely to have foaling complications, and they're maybe more likely to have complications after foaling in terms of producing milk, keeping their weight up, things like that. I don't actually have the statistics on that side of it, but I know for sure they are harder to get in foal and keep in foal, and that can be very expensive. So the other thing to look at when I say you need to be really objective is it's hard to talk about, and it's a thing a lot of people don't want to talk about, but really, at the end of the day, if you decide to breed a mare, one of your possible outcomes is a dead mare and a dead foal. It's not super common, but it's not rare. It's certainly not as rare as people want to think it is. So if you are picturing yourself standing in your barn a year from now and you don't have your favorite mare anymore and you don't have a baby to show for it, and you know in your heart that you're going to say, I regret my decision, I wish I still had the mare, don't breed her. Or if you are in a position financially to be able to do it, consider something like an embryo transfer. Because if you're breeding your mare because she's your absolute heart horse and you lose her at the end of it, you are going to have trouble living with that decision. I'm not saying I don't love my mares, but I have worked for breeders for most of my life in the horse world, and I went in eyes wide open about the risks and the possible outcomes. Why don't I give you a little bit of a background, actually. So my very first barn job ever when I was 15 was working for a breeder, and I have worked in various breeding and foaling facilities for the 17 years since then. So including my last 5 years, I have spent the spring working as a foaling attendant at a facility that just foals out racehorse mares. Standardbreds and thoroughbreds, the mares ship in, they have their babies, they go home. So I went into this breeding project after wanting to be a breeder since I was 12 years old. That's always been one of my goals. I spent my 20s learning everything I could about the industry and attending as many births as I could be at. So I have seen when they go perfectly, and I have seen when they are disasters, and I knew 100%, not 100%, nothing's 100%, but I knew what I was getting into, and I felt confident that I was managing my risks as well as I was able to. So that's my background in deciding to breed. I also knew that I love my mare, and I was not going to be objective about her quality. So part of my decision to breed, and what I really, really recommend everybody do, is I started talking to other people about her and whether they liked her enough to breed. I asked the clinicians at events that I was at, I asked stallion owners, would you consider this mare for your stud? And I asked friends in the industry, both breeders and just other horse people, whether they liked this mare enough to breed her. Because I know I can't be objective about a horse that I had already had for 8 years at that point. And they all said yes, which made me feel better about my decision. I know I have a nice mare conformationally. She looks good on paper, her breeding's good, she's registered, so those were all things that ticked boxes for me, but I still wanted that extra confirmation from other people that I trusted, and more to the point, people that I trusted would tell me the truth if they didn't agree with me. And I think that is so critically important, especially in the horse world. Guys, if you don't have somebody in your life who tells you no once in a while, you need to find one of those people. You need to trust their opinions when they tell you yes and when they tell you no. So my horse is a thoroughbred. I wanted to breed her to an Irish draft to produce an Irish sport horse because my goal for my breeding program has always been eventing and field hunters. So that was what I was going for. And that's exactly what I did. But like I said, in deciding to breed that cross, I had done a lot of studying, I had looked at stallions, I had looked at pedigrees and what their offspring and their siblings' offspring were doing in terms of competition, because my mare doesn't have a competition record. She's a very nice mare, but I don't have 10 years of first place ribbons to show for that, so I don't have that type of objective data to say, yes, this is a mare that's worthy of reproducing. And the reason that's so important to me is because there are a lot of horses in the world. And there are a lot of nice horses in the world. So the horses that aren't as nice don't have odds that are as good of having a good home for their whole life. And for me, in the decision to produce a new horse that wouldn't have existed without me, I needed to produce something that would have the best possible chance of having a good life. I never ever want a horse that comes out of my breeding program or my training program to be only worth what you could get at the meat market. And when you're talking about a baby with no show record, their only value is their pedigree and their conformation. That's all you've got. So I wanted to produce something that, God forbid, if something happened to me, that baby would still have the best possible chance of going to another educated horse person because they would have some value based on just their bloodlines alone. My husband is not a horse person. If something happened to me, I don't expect him to keep my horses. He might decide to do that, but he's not obligated to, and that needs to be a consideration. Is if you can't take care of this horse anymore, even if you're planning to breed it just for you, to keep for its whole life, if something changes and you can't do that anymore, your horse has to have something that will be valuable to another person. So why are you breeding? Like I said, if it's because you've got a sentimental attachment to your mare, that is not necessarily a bad reason to breed, but it is a reason that requires you to do a little bit more internal digging to make sure that it's the right decision for you. If you're breeding for sale, when are you hoping to sell that foal? If you are a full-time trainer and you've got a big property and you're not paying board on your horses, you might be breeding horses that you're hoping to sell as started 3 or 4-year-olds. And that might be a different type of cross than something you're hoping to sell either in utero based on the pedigree or as a weanling. The reason that is something that you need to know ahead of time is, again, cost. If you have land to just kick out your baby horses and let them grow up, you can make some slightly riskier decisions in terms of your breeding pair, because you're going to develop that horse into something that's already being ridden and sell it on its own merits, at least partially. If you're breeding something to sell as a newborn, the only merit that baby has is the parents. So you want to be really, really careful about that cross, because that's the only value that baby has at that point in its life. And I will do a whole video on cost and the breakdown of what it costs to breed, but guys, it is expensive. If you are buying a horse for $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, somebody has lost money on that. It costs, I'm going to say average in our area at least, is $1,000 for a stud fee, $300 for every collection. I think it costs me $60 in a call fee just to have the vet out. It's $60 or $70 for every ultrasound to track my mare up till the day she ovulates. Then it's 2 more ultrasounds to make sure she's pregnant at 14 days and at 30 days. And then you've got increased cost of feeding for at least part of her pregnancy. You've got the cost of sending her to a foaling facility or paying somebody to come in and foal her out for you. And then you're looking at foaling costs. That foal needs a vet visit on the first day. That foal probably in as many as 15% of cases, and maybe I can check with my vet to get more accurate numbers from them on what they've experienced in the last year or two, but there is a decent chance that you will need to run plasma on that foal, which could be anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000, at least in our part of Southern Ontario. Those kinds of things aren't rare, so I want you to be prepared that you could be in for thousands of dollars by the time your baby is 48 hours old. So if you are producing a foal from a mare you bought for $1,000 to the stallion up the road who's charging you $200 or $300, the odds that that baby is going to be worth more than what it costs you to put them on the ground is very low. And if you have all the money in the world to spend and this is a sentimental decision for you and that horse is never going to be at risk of ending up in a kill pen or on a meat truck, then you're in a really unique scenario and good for you and you do what you want with your horses. But if that is not your scenario, then I really want you to think critically about what you are setting this baby up for in its lifetime. So just to recap, you need to think about the quality of the mare, whether you're making a sentimental decision, what your goals are for the baby. Are you willing to take the risks that are associated with breeding and foaling for the sake of your mare, for the sake of your pocketbook? And are you willing to risk the costs that are associated? Obviously, I don't want you to just take my advice. If this is something you're considering, please call your veterinarian. Get their opinion on what they're seeing as average costs for getting a mare in foal and getting a foal delivered in your area. Most of the time they are not going to give you an opinion on whether you should breed, but they can at least give you a breakdown of costs that are reasonable for your area. And I don't want to discourage anybody from breeding, but I want to discourage people from breeding on a whim, because I really do think it's something that should be taken seriously. So, like I said, I'm going to do a couple more videos. If you guys have any questions for me, things you want to see, please feel free to ask in the comments, and I will try and work those into the next video. Thank you guys so much for listening today. I know I rambled a little bit, but I really appreciate your time. Don't just listen to me. I'm somebody on the internet. Call your vet, call a breeder in your area, ask them what they think, and have a great, great rest of your day. Thanks so much, guys.